Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast that can't seem to remember to record an intro before they go on a trip. I'm your buddy Al West, Hayden Samac, and today on the show we are having part 2 of our conversation with Thom Pollard. In part 1, he details the tragedy of the 1924 British expedition led by George Mallory that ultimately saw the deaths of him and his climbing partner, Sandy Irvine. In part 2 here, we are talking about the 1999 expedition that Thom was a part of that set out to find their bodies. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but suffice it to say, this is one of the most controversial chapters in the long and fabled history of Everest. So, let's get right to it. Here it is, part 2 of our conversation with Thom Pollard. We got the dog. We got the whiskey.
We've got the dog and the whiskey. What more could any human being want in life?
I could stand a story.
Yeah.
So it's 1999.
Yeah.
You are on a, how'd you get involved in this? Explain the expedition, the purpose of the expedition.
Yeah.
The characters and how you became involved in this.
Oh yeah. I just totally, there's no coincidences in life, and I feel that there's some reason for everything that happens, but it was pretty coincidental how I got involved in it. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I had I produced this film for a friend of mine who summited Everest in 1991. He was the first New Englander to climb Mount Everest. Whoopee ding, right? Nowadays, it's like the first person with red hair from.
Yeah, right. And it took to 1991 for that to happen?
For the first New Englander.
Really?
To this day, only 3 people from New Hampshire have ever summited Everest. So It's like, yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah. And who cares, right? But back then it was something. So the guy had money, $15,000, and he hires me to do a film with this 3 hours of raw footage that he shot on a high-8 video camera. It was crap. It was horrible. It just absolute shit footage. And his camera batteries froze, so he didn't even have summit footage. It was just a radio recording. I'm on the summit. Oh, yeah. So I did this film, and it came out really good. I called it Thin Air.
Okay.
We're talking 1992-ish, 93, before 1996, right? So I call it Thin Air. So you heard it. Tom's trying to start beef with Crack Hour. Right. I'm after you. So I do this film, and coincidentally, no coincidence in life, it was that film, Thin Air, was running on WGBH in Boston 3 days after the 1996 disaster made famous by John Krakauer's book, Into Thin Air. Yeah. And so the producers from Nova, which is produced in GBH, it's a science documentary series, which has been going now for like 40 years or something. The producers are watching this going, oh my God, we have to buy this film and go and put it on Nova as a nationwide documentary. And it was good. So it was a nice job. And I had this real professional voiceover guy, Don Westcott, who did all these Nova documentaries and, beautiful voice and music and all that. So they bought the film, but when they bought it, I was on Gasherbrum 2 in Pakistan at the time. So like there was no negotiating. They found my buddy Rick Wilcox's wife, who made a deal, and this is like such interesting. She sold it to him for $5,000. Right? $5,000 is like, believe me, and they're going national with this. And they added an insert. They interviewed David Bashirs to do this thing. Well, the storm over Everest, because he was there. David Bashirs was there during the storm, and he saved Makalu Gao and had all this stuff going on, which is another great story right there. But so when I came home, I called Nova, and they were like, yeah, you probably want to renegotiate, don't you? Because this Rick's now ex-wife, she hired an attorney who charged her $2,500. So Rick and I split $2,500 for this film that I worked for like 18 months on, like toiled over. I made money on it. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, it was fine. But
yeah. So that you want to renegotiate.
There was a paycheck to be had.
Yeah, there was. So, and I was like, you know what? I'll tell you what. If you have a really good gig, like good high altitude mountain gig that comes up, you call me. And they're like, okay, wink, wink. I'm thinking I'll never hear from them again. Fast forward, Nova does 2 documentaries about Everest. They did one after the 96 and then did one 97 that David Bashir's produced. He's a Boston guy, was a Boston guy, just died, RIP to one of the great high altitude filmmakers of all time. Nova essentially got invested and involved in this expedition to go look for the bodies of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine.
No, let me ask you this.
Oh, let me tell you how I got. So then you ask me whatever you want. So January 1999, I get a phone call. 15-month-old son at home, had just bought a house, had this job. I was like not killing it or anything. I get a phone call. Hey, you want to go to Mount Everest? Like 2 days later, I'd quit my job, and 6 weeks later, I was on an airplane to Everest. So yeah.
Well, the where does that plane land? Kathmandu?
Kathmandu.
Yeah. So when you're pitched this project, because that was the intent of the expedition, right? Finding the bodies of
Mallory and Irvine, looking for the bodies. And we had clues. There was an historian on it, this German guy named Jochen Hemleb, who was obsessed with Everest. And it takes a kind of a science mind to put all this stuff together. And he had this 8-page search manual. Like, like the Everest Manifesto, right? Like, this is where you're going to look. Here's the clues. We know that Sandy Irvine's ice axe was found near the ridge at this elevation, at this location. There was a sighting of George Mallory's body in 1975. And he put all these coordinates together, and he said, we're going to go back up and search. And I was the cameraman, and I was on the search team. So this wasn't
like... in Geraldo opening Capone's vault.
No.
This wasn't like, this was a real, not you expected, but you had a reasonable expectation that it could have happened.
Yeah. I mean, in all transparency, my thought was, this is the gig that gets me to be able to quit a job being an editor and director of photography for a video production company that makes hospital videos and people selling like new circuits for houses and stuff like that. I was just done. And so I got to quit my job. And to be honest, I never heard of Mallory and Irvine at the time. And I was like, there's no way in hell they're ever going to find the body. But I slowly came around.
Do you know what the square mileage was of the search area?
No, it's like, think about an American football field. So much smaller than a European football soccer field. Probably 12 or 14 of those, in a amoeba shaped landscape.
So it was like refined like that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit bigger, but on about a 40 to 50 degree slope of downward sloping shale at 26 to 27,000 feet in altitude. So it was like full on death zone. You die if you slip and fall search area, not like, looking for a needle in a haystack, but like in the death zone stuff.
Who else was on that expedition?
That the primary guy that a lot of people hung their hopes on was Conrad Anker, a neighbor essentially of yours.
My understanding of it was he wasn't the actual leader of the expedition. He was like kind of like this
hotshot alpinist.
Bad motherfucker.
He was known in the mountaineering community and the alpinist community as like a really super strong kind of there's like a strong level, and then there's like this elite group of guys who are stronger, faster. He was and more technically able.
The difference between a high level track and field athlete and somebody who's going to put up a fight in the Olympics.
Absolutely, yeah. He was Olympian kind of level, and but the expedition was overseen and managed by Eric Simonson out of Ashford, Washington, a Seattle kind of based guy, and his company was and still is International Mountain Guides. So he ran the expedition like an old school expedition operator, the way it might have been run in 1953 when. What
do you mean by that?
His word, everything hangs on his word. Like, it's not like some hot
It was
shot
not a democracy. It was not a meritocracy. It was a...
Simonson says, you're going up. Like, he ran it a tight ship, and he was this behemoth, like this gargantuan man, like 6'4", built like a brick house. And when he spoke, literally, you love him or hate him, like you respected him. Yeah. And he ran it like a tight ship. But this is the cool thing. This is what happened. What makes it so freaking interesting is all these outside interests are hanging their hopes on it. So Simo, that's his kind of his nickname, and a fond one. There's like no derogatory, and like, but Simo had signed on with Mountain Zone, which was this, back in 1999, the internet was kind of in its nascent stages, right? America Online, like hadn't even heard of it really. And back then I didn't have email address or anything. I think I might've just gotten an email address. So Simo had just signed on with Mountain Zone. They gave him money and exclusive rights to any first photograph. Then we've got Nova, the science series is there, right? And so they're an interest. They've got their film. And then the BBC signs on, British Broadcasting, and they're going to do a film. So suddenly all these people are in, and I was being paid by Nova, by WGBH in Boston. That was my paycheck. So even though Simo's running the ship and I had my dreams to get to the summit, I was working for Nova. And Liesl Clark, this absolutely brilliant producer out of Boston, she was like my boss, if you will. So no matter what, I was always had to go to her to make, is this cool? And then some of the other people had to go to the BBC, and then a lot of people were working for Simo. So it was this, like, it had the beginnings of a terrible disaster in the making, in a good way, but also in a really bad way. But so anyway, I might be jumping forward, but here I am in Kathmandu on March 18th.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's where I wanted to go after this. Tell me about the expedition.
Yeah, so we go in, and it's this great team. We've got Conrad, Andy Politz, who had summited in 1991.
Had Conrad been to Everest at this point?
No, he was like, I'll never freaking climb Everest, man. I'm not doing that. But he got in, just enough, like, hey, this is this great opportunity, maybe make some money. Who knows? It'd be pretty cool. So he's like, all right. And he signed up. Obviously Simonson was there, who had his summit of Everest in 91. Dave Hahn, who is a great guide, now 15 summits of Everest. At the time had 2 summits of Everest. 2 young guys, Jake Norton and Tap Richards, who were guides on Mount Rainier, who had done like 200 summits of Rainier, and real powerhouse dudes, just monsters, like really, really strong guys. And then Graham Hoyland, a British guy who had already had a summit of Everest, who was not coincidentally the grandnephew of Howard Somervell, whose camera it was that George Mallory was carrying to the summit, who was with Teddy Norton on that ill-fated summit attempt on June 4th. So there was a direct lineage from the 24 expedition to Graham Hoyland, who was on the team. So I'm going there like, I just don't want to look like an asshole and totally screw this thing up. I just want good footage. I was so nervous. I'm 37 years old, essentially in a way, same age as George Mallory at the time when Mallory disappeared. 15-month-old son at home, literally standing over my son's crib, like crying. I won't make, he's like asleep, but I won't do what he did. I'll be back. Like seriously, there was like an ominous tone to this expedition, but I felt like my professional potential for the future was, I had so much to prove on this, and nobody knew me. Like Simonson, like who? Who's this Pollard guy? And I'd done really cool shit on, in Pakistan and Alaska and South America. I've done some cool stuff.
Right, but you never done anything on this scale.
No, this is it. So just as you said, so I was, really strong and everything, but it was like I'd been competing in, kind of this regional competition, and suddenly I'm in the Olympics and the gun goes off, like the starting gun, and it's like, how are you going to do now?
That's funny. Here's your big break. All you got to do is get up Everest.
with Conrad, like who's one of the strongest alpinists of the era, and he was believe me, a freak of nature, and I mean that in the most complimentary way that you could even possibly imagine. Just like forget him, like he's off and going,
Hey guys, this is Ad Hayden coming to you, or I guess semi-Ad Hayden. We had a whole bunch of ad copy written up, but I don't think I need it for this product. I just want to tell you about something that I like genuinely. That's sharedpour.com. Sharedpour.com is the place to go, in my humble opinion, if you're looking for hard-to-find bourbons, allocated whiskeys. I know that those two are sometimes the same thing. Or just spirits in general. I've been using them since way before we even considered being partners with them. Actually, since before, Andrew, I think, when did we start recording episodes for this? Yeah, like since before we recorded the first episode of Backcountry Manifesto. And here's the receipts to prove it. You see this bottle of Mammoth from our bourbon? That's a single barrel select right there. Now check this out. Here, you can hear it too if you're listening. Right, is that gonna be in frame, Andrew? Okay, well right here, I don't know. There's my receipt from March of 2024. I really do use these people. I believe in them as a company. They're great folks. Now, if you're 21 or older, that is very important. If you're a minor, pay no attention to this advertisement. And you live in the United States, sharedpour.com will ship liquor straight to your doorstep. You'll need a signature, but they'll do it with flat rate shipping, which is really helpful if you're ordering a couple bottles. That way you don't pay out the nose through shipping. You could order 10, 15 bottles. I don't know, maybe Craig, don't get mad at me. And they will ship for the same price as one. The other thing is that they're customer service experts. If you call them, should you have a problem with your order, and you won't, you will get a person who actually works there answering the phone and making the issue right. They have the best selection, whether it's a single barrel pick, again, a hard to find allocated bourbon, or even your daily sipper. You should check out sharedpour.com. And right now, and that is ad speak, you can use code BACKCOUNTRY, okay? That's Backcountry, all one word, all caps. I think that's important. That's what they were texting me and telling me was important. You will get 10% off your entire purchase at sharedpour.com. Go check them out. You'll like them as much as I do. You'll get a bunch of cool whiskey. You'll impress your friends. You'll annoy your spouse. And you'll have some great spirits. Backcountry for 10% off your order at sharedpour.com.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So there we are at base camp, and we're in a position. We had done we had done some rotations up the mountain to become acclimatized. So it's May 1st, 1999. And the plan is we're going to go on the radio on a two-way call at 5 a.m. sharp with Jochen Hemleb, who's down at the North Col. He might have been at base camp. It doesn't even matter really, but it's freezing. It's probably 30 below, the wind chill, the wind's whipping up. And I'm supposed to film and now keep up with these other 5 guys to go look for the body up at an altitude I'd never been to before. I've been to the altitude we slept at that night, but on a few occasions. And so I have, hello, my little friend. He's bored. I can understand. I've said this story long.
And he's talking about Boone, not me.
Yeah, he's talking about, yeah, right. So somehow, some way I got my camera going at 5 a.m. sharp. Dave Hahn presses the radio just as the sun is cracking up over the horizon, and you can see the shadow of Everest cast into the atmosphere. And it was just this stunning scene. And Jochen calls up, Jake, how did you sleep last night? And Dave Hahn's like, we didn't come here to sleep. We came here to search. And I was like, he's in a bad mood, man. Don't mess with Dave Hahn. And so the radio call ends, and I film all these dudes climbing out, right? Jake stops at me. Tap stops at me. Hey, fix my oxygen. They're having this finicky time with the oxygen, right? Fix it. My camera and my backpack is on the ground. I film them out of sight, get my backpack on, and my freaking oxygen was doing just what theirs was doing, but I'm alone now. Mm-hmm. And of the 6 guys, I didn't have a radio. So I couldn't go like, hey, wait up, I'm coming up. Like, just wait probably 10 minutes.
So you did the prudent thing here.
I did the prudent thing, did the man thing. Don't ask for directions. Just try to drive around for a few hours until you find the store that you're going to or whatever. So I kept going up. And I finally just bail. I had to bail. And I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to find anything today. It's not happening.
And then what happens?
Yeah. So I go back down to Camp 5, like 25,000+ feet, fill these bags of snow so they could have stuff to melt for water. And at about 30 in the morning, Conrad goes just outside of the search zone and finds the body of George Mallory, 75 years after he disappeared. His back exposed, face down to the scree, perfectly pointing uphill, if you will, his arms outstretched, kind of his fingers clawing down into the surface, his back completely exposed, like his layers of clothing had just worn away over the 75 years. So his back was bare. Yeah. And
it's a famous photograph.
Dave Hahn took one of the most incredibly powerful photographs I've ever seen. It was a brilliant photograph, just mind-boggling, poignant and tragic and sad and beautiful in this weird way. And his leg, had snapped in half under the knee. It was an open wound tib fib fracture, like 90 degrees snapped. So some trauma had happened. And at the time, the 5 guys there thought it was Sandy because the hair that was sticking out of this little leather kind of climbing helmet had bleached out. So they didn't know it was Mallory. They're like, oh, we found Sandy. And Jake Norton went so far as to start carving a little in memoriam Sandy. And they're like, wait.
Well, what's the detail there? How did they find out?
So they started kind of pulling at the clothes and everything. And I think Jake pulled back the collar of the body, if you will, at the base of the skull. And he turns it over and it said G.L. Mallory. This is George Mallory. And if anybody's ever seen the film, Dave Hahn just goes, oh my God. And they just flipped out. I think not that Sandy
wouldn't have been, but it was like, this is
Mallory, like the British Empire's, golden boy kind of. And there they were at the site of George Mallory. And so what happens when somebody dies up on a mountain up there in the death zone or
they get like freeze dried.
They freeze solid essentially. And their body kind of fuses into the ground. So little particulate bits of snow start to accumulate around the body and the clothing, and they become fused to the surface. Like you can't move them. They're stuck. And it's the ice, the rock, the surface is bulletproof. It's like, it's frozen solid. And so they did a search of the area. And by the way, not only his back was exposed, but almost all the clothing down to the boot on his foot had just worn away. And there are these birds up there, these really cool crow, maybe smaller than a crow, these birds they call goraks, and they fly up into the thermals and they'll land and they'll pick at bodies and stuff. So Mallory's calves were gone. Like you could just see the sinews of his body and his glutes and his butt was gone. Really? Like you could see into the body cavity. And the reason I'm not saying I'm projecting this because obviously I got to go see him 2 weeks later, but they couldn't extract him from the surface. So they did whatever they could and only looked at the top part, and then they said, okay, we're done. They covered him with rocks. They read Psalm 103 from the Bible as per the wishes of the Mallory family. And that was it. Essentially, no camera. Took a lot of pictures.
Like when you say no camera, you don't mean that they did not have the camera.
They did not find the camera that we believed Mallory had borrowed from Howard Somerville.
And why is that important? What did people believe that camera might have had on it?
Right. Many people surmise that had Mallory had that camp with him on a summit day, if he had summited, of course, if it wasn't dark, he would have taken a picture on the summit. Yeah. And a lot of experts from Polaroid, Kodak said if the film had not been damaged and was in the dark, that we would be able to develop the film, that it would be possible to actually get that film back to the United States and develop it. So, and it's happened. They found 100-year-old film frozen in the ice and developed it. And so we were after the camera and any other clues that we could find. And so they came down kind of empty-handed, but they did find an altimeter. They found little bits and pieces of rope and a pencil and this little tin that said meat lozenges on it. They were like these little kind of pellets that were made of beef or something. Weird stuff, right? And these thin mint things that you could eat up there, little candies. He had tons of stuff on his body. And they brought that down and with no conclusive evidence one way or the other what had happened.
What route they had taken, whether they had summited.
Yeah, nothing.
So this discovery happens. 2 weeks later, you have your chance to go up because you were still fucking around with your oxygen at that point. Yeah. You decided not to risk trying to navigate up to where, not even where you knew they were, where you thought they might be, because it was a search, right? So it's plausible that they wouldn't be confined to one route. They could be off in a bunch of different directions.
Two, definitely. And they're very different. But the search area was still, that search area would have stayed no matter what.
Sure. Okay.
That was locked solid. So we go back down to base camp and suddenly it's the front page of the New York Times, Newsweek, and Time.
So before you had gone up there, it had already gone out
after the discovery of the body. Before I went back up. Yeah.
The idea was originally to keep it kind of quiet.
Yeah.
Right?
The idea was
how did it get out?
Yeah, I know. Oh, this is we're just the wheels start tumbling off the cart and the cart's swiggling down the road, So the deal was that we were going to keep everything really quiet and nobody was going to know. And so the morning we're all at advanced base camp, 21,000 feet. And I'm at the outside part, right by the door of the dining tent. We're eating breakfast, and a buddy of mine that I met in Pakistan, Fabrizio Zangrilli, walks by, and he goes, "Hey, congratulations on the discovery." And we're all looking around. What are you talking about? And he goes, "Oh, I was just listening to my shortwave radio. Sir Edmund Hillary was congratulating your team on the discovery of George Mallory's body." And we're all looking around. What the frick, man, what the hell? And nobody knew. And it's cool. It's all good. But the mountain zone was a very big, I can't say that Simo went renegade because I know Liesl Clark sent out a report and the news started getting out. And that was probably a no-no. And so to keep ahead of the curve, then the picture that Dave Hahn took of Mallory's back got released. So it was suddenly out there. Millions of, the website started crashing. New York Times puts a picture of Conrad next to George Mallory on the cover of the New York Times. I mean, so Conrad goes from just an alpinist rock star to world-known guy. Yeah. Newsweek and Time magazine start competing for rights to the photograph. And purportedly, I don't know if this is an absolute fact, paid $50 grand. Newsweek won $50 grand, right? And that's a lot of money for a photograph in 1999 or any time. And then all of a sudden, all these people from representing book publishers, hey, why don't you sign with us to write a book on this? And meanwhile, this is all taking place. We come back down to base camp, and by now it's about May 6, 7, 8. I'm flipping shit, man. I missed the greatest discovery in the history of mountaineering. Should I have just gone up without the oxygen?
Just a nightmare situation.
I was so depressed. I mean, I was freaking out. I'm really, really upset. Oh my God, I let everybody down, myself mainly. No, I didn't let anybody down. Whatever, man. Who cares, right? But I was freaking out. And so one of the other things that happened when I decided to go back to Camp 5, I told you I didn't have a radio. There was some radio comms going on. They're like, well, where's Pollard? Because they're looking from a telescope, and Yakin could only count 1, 5. 2, 3, 4, and it was some comment like, well, I don't know. We don't know where he is. He disappeared or something like that. And it got taken
to Pollard's missing.
Yeah. Like kind of Pollard went missing. And within about 24 hours, my parents and my wife at home think I'm dead. Seriously. So like, they're like, oh my God, like he's dead. And nobody knew, but my parents are flipping shit at home. And then a guy that was writer for this Springfield Republican newspaper comes to my house like 2 days later. And my wife is thinking that he's going to talk about the body is found. She opens the door. Well, he's dead. Right. And the guy's like, what? No, I just got an email from him.
Yeah.
He was like, what? He's live. So like, oh, let me call his parents. And my parents were freaking out. Like, so a lot of real little mini mistakes just added up. Like, that's not cool, man. Like, that was bad stuff. And I knew it was going on.
The reporting about your potential death?
Yeah. Like as what did Mark Twain say? The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. That's or something. Funny. You know? And so there were a lot of little things happening that were, all is not well in paradise, and it's all good. Like, but the camps were forming, and Eric Simo said, like, look, we should just cut our losses now and go home. And I'm thinking, oh no, please. Like, and I had
because I
wanted to go back up so badly.
You wanted to get up.
At least give me a summit.
Yeah.
I was like, by this time I was like, there were a lot of strong climbers on that trip, but I was just like in full force. I was like Noel O'Dell in 1924. I was like, to go faster than Jake Norton is saying something, man. But I was like on fire, right? So I was like, get me back up there. So we finally had a team meeting. We decided to go back up. So we go back up in the interim on May 8th, 3 Ukrainians summit without oxygen. One guy disappears through a cornice, like right near the summit. One guy, there's this huge rescue up the mountain. He almost dies, right? So there's like tragedy has just taken place on the mountain. We go back up. A few more deaths had taken place when we're going up, but all the other teams from other expeditions are coming off the mountain. And we're in position after a 3-day storm from Camp 5 on May 16th. It's determined that I'm going to give up my summit bid and go back to the site of George Mallory with a metal detector with Andy Politz, who had already been to the summit. Conrad and Dave Hahn, Jake Norton, and Tap Richards are going to go to the second step and see if it would have been possible for Mallory to actually climb free the second step.
What do they determine?
Conrad thinks it's possible.
Yeah.
But he doesn't think it's likely, but there's a possibility. But
so you go down to the body. And at this point, you have the metal detector, so you're looking for the camera. We're looking for the camera
now. And there was snow on the mountain, so original plan was to go look for Irvine. So like just fan out. So we fanned out, get back to the site of Mallory with the metal detector. Those other 4 guys were going to go to the summit, like leave at 2 a.m. the next day, like 17th, right? Andy and I get to the body, and he's standing at Mallory, who's now covered with, just a few rocks. Yeah. Believe me, not like a huge grave.
It's not like he's like buried. He's
his leg is still sticking out, barefoot. Like it, it's you're upon the site of a guy who just died an awful death. But there was some rocks covering him.
75 years before, but nonetheless.
75 years frozen into position. And I still don't know why I reacted this way. I was so overcome by emotion when I saw him. I literally just dropped my knees and like about 20 feet away. And I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what right do we have to go to do anything? This man is like, we don't have any right to touch him. And Andy, who I was like fast friends, he starts laughing. Yeah. I knew you're going to have a moral dilemma with this one, Pollard. What are you going to do? And he didn't give a shit. He'd been to the summit. He was at the body on May 1st. He's like, you do whatever you want. This is your game right now, Pollard. You want to do the metal detector?
It's interesting because this discovery was not without a significant amount of controversy, a lot of which was rooted in the way that mostly outsiders had perceived that the body was interacted with and the scene was interacted with.
Yeah. Wade Davis, the guy who wrote Into the Silence, he saw the raw footage of the first search and he wrote about it, and it was not pretty.
Do you think he wrote about it correctly?
Yeah. But I don't think that there was anybody trying to hack at the body. He's fused into the ice. He's part of the mountain. And if you're going to try to move the body, you got to get your ice axe into right next to his body.
That was the goal.
Trying to free him.
The goal was to liberate him from the mountain.
Yeah. And they were unsuccessful.
And in that way, were they trying to carry him back? Were they trying to inter
want to look
him?
Under him and see if there's any, maybe the camera's on his chest pocket.
Oh. What was the overarching reception from the public? What was the overarching reaction from the climbing community? Or I say the climbing community. I'm still in Stone Master mode, dude. The alpinist community.
It was within the community, especially from Britain. You barbaric assholes have no right to do what you did. It was awful.
Why?
Even Sir Edmund Hillary was like, you barbaric bastards. What did you do to our national hero? Chris Bonington, Doug Scott, guys that I literally prayed to as a young alpinist. These are the guys, you fucking assholes. What did you do to our golden god? And you stepped on him and you hacked at his butt. It was ugly. Joe Simpson, who wrote Touching the Void, it was bad.
Why do they feel that way?
They think it was just a barbaric act of brutality. And it wasn't, man. It was, I wasn't there on May 1st. I can only say what I know. Sure. But I'm saying that here's these mountain climbers with no experience of exhuming a body. We're just mountain climber filmmaker guys who are up there with a job to do, the Mallory and Irvine families had kind of signed off on it. If you find the body, read the Psalm 103, do what you can.
And then try and understand what happened to the best of your abilities. Yeah. And some of that requires a little bit of forensic analysis.
He's a dead body, broken into pieces in front of us. Come on, man. And he's a dead body. I have a lot of respect for it, but his soul and everything is long gone, man. And so it was bad. But the outside public,
they were just we found George Mallory.
Yeah. I want to touch the person that saw George Mallory. Ridiculous. It was twofold.
And how do you feel about it looking back now? And
no regrets. Zero.
Oh no, I'm not asking you if you regret it. I'm asking you.
I look back on it now we did the best we could, and I don't think anybody in a million years could have predicted what it was going to be like to be there at the body of George Mallory. I don't really think anybody prepared for that moment. No one. Never even talked about it. Other than read Psalm 103, Andy. Yeah. That was it. Nobody knew.
So you approach George Mallory. You have your moment of
doubt. I'll tell you what happened on that. So I'm kneeling there. Andy's laughing, having fun with me.
What do you think about that?
I loved it.
What?
And that he did that. He laughed at me.
Yeah.
I love it. He was like my pet. We were like. So there was a soulmate experience.
He wasn't so much ridiculing.
Oh, he loved it. He was like, I knew, Pollard, it's so you to have a moment with this because I know you and I understand you. And he was busting on your very close to this day. Oh yeah. He loved it because he thought it was beautiful. This is good. I'm not
okay.
I could have just done let's remove the rocks. It's freaking I'm like, what are we going to do? And so we had this 2 to 5 minute conversation. I was like, George Mallory traveled around the world to talk about exploration and transcendence and what the mountains do to a soul of a man or a woman endeavoring to go to new heights, literally. And that's all he ever wanted to do, was to go to that place that nobody said he could go to. And the May 1st team of 5 guys came home with nothing that would say whether he made it or didn't. And I'm there at the site of George Mallory. And when we walk away, it's over. Like, nobody ever goes back there. It's done.
Are you aware of anybody who's been back there since?
No. Yeah. Like, nobody can find him. He's
really?
Like, yeah. So I'm sitting there going, I'm not talking to Andy right now. I'm talking to George Mallory right now. So what would Mallory think if we walked away? He would stand up. He would bring life back into the body and say, you get your ass back here and you look for every conceivable clue, because I've got 3 kids in their 70s at home who don't know what happened to me. You better do everything in your power. And I mean it. Like, that overwhelmed me. I was like, let's go. Yeah. Boom. I took my backpack, oxygen off, and I was like, this is for him.
Yeah.
This had nothing to do with me. I mean, I was almost floating out of my body in that moment. I mean it. Like, it was like, we just went, get to work. Seriously. And I pulled those rocks off, and I was like, I'm going to take care of you like you're my grandfather.
Yeah.
But in so doing, the work that the guys had done on May 1st almost worked in freeing his body. We're like, Andy, we're like close. We can lift him up.
Yeah.
And he was frozen solid.
Yeah.
And we lifted him up. And as we did it, Andy goes, I'm going to put get the metal detector. Every time it beeps, reach in and grab. So the metal beep, 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 and I'd reach, and no rock or no camera or no, piece of metal or anything. And I reached into his pocket, found his watch, there was no crystal. The watch had broken. It was facing in to his body. So the watch had broken. He obviously took it off and put it in his pocket, and it was frozen. The hour hand was like one little bit between 1 and 2. And the minute hand, which was broken off, the hour hand was still there, was at about 25 minutes. So 1:25-ish. They were last seen at 12:50 p.m., right? Going.
That's really interesting. The concrete timeline.
That's what I've always thought, and it might have broken the night before.
I mean, sure, it'd be crazy if he fell all that way and said, "Oh, let me put this watch in my pocket."
You're about to die. Who cares about a watch?
One of the long story short. You look
short story long.
Well,
it was a 4-hour podcast episode.
They'll never know. I think it's great, man.
It's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I don't hear the story that often.
You liberate the body from the mountain, and you are the only person that has seen the face of George Mallory.
Yes.
You kind of lifted him up a certain amount and kind of got under there. Is that inaccurate?
Yep.
What do you see?
Yeah. So he's lifted up, and Andy's standing and trying to keep the body from kind of slamming like a door.
Yeah, it's at like a 45-degree angle or something.
And he's
right
more
now.
horizontal to the slope, and he's working the metal detector at the same time. So I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm not thinking about his face at this point in time.
Oh, okay. So you hadn't gotten more or less under there to look at his face.
Not at
You'd
the
gone
time,
under there to look for
I was literally like kind of chest to the ground, crawling around and without being too descriptive, out of a respectful thing for family who literally still listen to this stuff, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. And because his clothes were so worn off, they kind of, like when we lifted him, they kind of just fell off. Yeah, sure. No, they just disintegrated.
Oh.
It was just surreal. And and that's when I started becoming really conscious of how much I wanted to respect him. And So I was kind of speaking, and Andy and I put our cameras down because how are you going to film and do all this? So there was no camera rolling, but I'm saying, Andy, this is what I see. Oh, I found a watch. Hand me the watch. And Andy puts the watch in a Ziploc baggie. I don't know how he did it, but it was gone. Handed it to him. So I kind of swished around on my back, right? To kind of like I wanted to look in here, and just see if there's something. I was like, oh, he's got his leather helmet is attached under his chin. So I was just sitting there, like kind of working, like, I couldn't free it. And I started like kind of yarding on it. And I'm thinking, oh, that's not cool. So I said, we're going to leave the helmet on. And it was like kind of right around there. And I was like, holy shit, Andy. I'm looking in his face, and it was like right here. I mean, I was like,
how well preserved was it?
Perfect.
Really?
Like he fell asleep like 10 minutes before. I mean it. Like it was perfectly preserved. Like no frostbite. Maybe his nose just ever so slightly compressed. But the one trauma that I saw was over his left eye. There was a golf ball sized hole, literally punctured right through his skull, and there were shards of skull like right here, like just completely into his head, and no rock, nothing in it. But I absolutely was mystified, like how could that happen? But he had like, and I was just trying to be tender with him, like when if you've ever been with somebody right before they die or something, you want to touch them, right? Like, and so I just wanted to be like, okay, it's like, all right, man, I'm right here. And he had I remember thinking like probably 6 days of growth of like a beard on his face, and his skin is still had like, it's still, like you could still push.
You saw him in a very human sort of way.
I saw him in all his vulnerabilities. And it was shocking to me at how human he was. Not a god. He was a human being who just got consumed by his passions. And all I could think of is like, I need to tell anybody who would hear this story. We never found the camera or anything. No. And it never occurred to me that I was the only guy who saw his face until like 15 years later. I just like kind of never talked about it.
So interestingly, we were talking about a negative reaction from the climbing community.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how some people wrote it. I read one where somebody characterized it as you slithering under George. I mean, like, it's like very intentionally descriptive language.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not at all how you felt. The thing went down, and I'd like to think that, I mean, I know you as much as one can know somebody in a short amount of time. We've had some phone conversations, and the only way that I've ever heard you talk about this is without a lot of self-aggrandizement. Aggrandizing. You've described this stuff, I feel like, in a really level and fair sort of way. I personally don't get that same sense, but you can understand it, particularly in a comment, but like a question that some people have, and that question being, some people wonder if you've taken a picture of the face of George Mallory, and that's it's been debated for years and years and years, and to my knowledge, I don't think you've ever talked about that.
Not really.
Did you take a picture of George Mallory's face, man?
I used to be really coy about this and not want anybody to know. Yeah. And this was for a reason. I was thinking, well, if I ever write a book, then people will buy the book, so they'll find the answer to it. But honestly, I did not take a picture of his face. I took a lot of pictures. I took probably 40. We're talking film.
Yeah.
If it was a digital camera, I probably would have taken 500 pictures.
Yeah, sure.
And a picture of his face if it was digital too. So you just bang, 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 bang. I was under there, and I remember saying out loud to Andy, should I take a picture of his face? And he goes, I don't know, man. This is like
you and God, dude.
Yeah, pretty much. He goes, I don't know. And I thought, I don't know if I can trust myself with that photo and how powerful. I probably made a lot of money with that photo, man.
Yeah.
that would have been a hell of a lot bigger of a sale than the picture of his back. And maybe for scientific purposes to show the trauma in his skull. And I just thought, like, I have so much to learn about life right now, man. I don't know. What if this film gets out and his family is shocked and embarrassed and ashamed and angry, and I just can't live with it. And it took me about 5 seconds to make my mind up. And I just said, I'm not doing it. And he goes, okay. And that's it. So we lowered him back down. We did everything we could to find more rocks to cover him, to put them all back into place. And that was it. No camera, nothing, And so we found more about how traumatized he was. Like, there was no trauma no frostbite on his toes, nothing on his face. This is why you're probably going to ask me, do you think he made it to the summit? That might be coming soon. But his hands were very bad, but they were bare. He had no gloves. We found no gloves on his hands. His face was perfect. His toes were perfect, like nothing on his toes. And those leather boots, you wouldn't shovel your driveway in the winter wearing boots like that. And here's that guy at 28,000 feet. So we walked away kind of defeated in a way, but I felt like I did the right thing. I regret not taking that picture? I'm not a regret guy, so I wouldn't say a regret, but it's like, maybe, but I almost guarantee you, had I would have sold the picture.
Yeah.
And that's something you can't reverse that.
So
I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah.
But maybe for scientific purposes, but I could.
It would have been valuable to somebody as a scientific article. It also would have been valuable to somebody as a sensationalized news piece. So you're happy that you just didn't even afford yourself that temptation in the moment, and you still think you made the right call?
Yeah, I mean, it probably was.
I think you made the right call.
Yeah, I do. I mean, if it wasn't me and it was another guy and he sold the picture, I would have been like, and took the picture. I've been like, don't worry about it, man. It's fine. You should, for purposes of studying the scene, it probably would have been a good idea. But on the other hand, I want you to, so here's George Mallory, and I'm there looking at him essentially without clothes on. And I'm like, God, he's like, how can I fucking take a picture of this guy's face? Like, is there no line to draw here? And I just felt like I can't do that. I've never once thought like I should have done it. Never, ever. I'm Pollard slithered under the body. I'm like, fuck off, man. Yeah. Seriously. Like, really? Like, what would any human being, I almost died getting there. It's life and death. Like, if I had slipped at the body, I'm gone. You die up there. Yeah. It's not like out in the field out there. Yeah. You die if you slip while you're searching around there. It's life or death. Every moment is life or death up there. Not like trying to dramatize it like, ooh, but it is. Yeah. You die if you mess up. Like a rock tumbles and you just watch it disappear. Like, gone. Like, that could be a human body. It's amazing Mallory didn't keep going. Yeah. And so it's like, if I met George Mallory today, he'd hug, I guarantee you'd hug me and be like, thank you for doing me a solid, man. Yeah. And I mean it. I looked at him like, we are one now. I felt that way. Not like I have this special relationship with George Mallory, because I don't, but somehow, some way, I crossed paths with him that day. Didn't speak about it for 15, 6, like years and years. And it's like, what, screw it. Like, there's too much, like, I feel like people can learn about, like, going past a line of no return. Like, he got consumed by his passions. He went too far. That's too bad. I think he turned around, by the way, but, I'll let you ask, did they make it to the summit or not? But, so, we asked the gallery, like, did he make it to the summit? Should you have taken a picture? God only knows. I don't know. Did I do the right thing? I don't know, but I feel good about it. Very solid about the decision. And I know he would have, thanks for doing everything you could do to bring my story home.
So in like a previous conversation of ours, you had mentioned that certain people involved in that expedition view their lives 1999 before and 1999 after.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people kind of view their shit like that. But at any rate, couple, I guess, questions that kind of line up with that. We're here 25 years after that expedition and 100 years after, the initial incident.
Yep.
Like, meditate on it for me, man. Like, how has your life changed after? What did that expedition mean to you? And what do you think lies at the core of the infatuation, both within the alpine community and just the general public, in the expedition disappearance of George Mallory?
Yeah. Well, Jochen Hemleb, the historian for the 99 expedition and subsequent expeditions after that went to look for him, 3 or 4 more that Jochen led, he had a conversation with Eric Simonson some years ago, and Simonson summed it up by saying, and he never said it to me, but it resonates. He said, I measured my life like everything up until 1999 and everything that happened after it, meaning that there was something transformative in the events that took place on the mountain with our expedition, the Mallory and Irvine research expedition. And so many profound things happened in so many lives that I don't think that there's anybody who walked away from that experience without having been changed or their perspective on the world forever altered. And for me, at least, in a hugely beneficial way. But it took some years for me to get that. People like Conrad, was skyrocketed into, national notoriety, international notoriety, and in a good and probably a difficult way too, because suddenly here's this alpinist who just wants to be free and wild out in the mountains, and suddenly is like, you're the guy who found Mallory. And so that's his thing. That can't be easy, right? And there was some acrimony and divisiveness in that expedition, a lot of different groups that, went their different ways. And now looking back after 25 years, it's amazing to think that was 25 years ago. I have so much gratitude for not only the cool things that happened, being there at the site of George Mallory and amazing friendships that I've developed with several of the individuals on that trip. It's some of the hard things, the bad things that, if you will, happened, that would be a whole nother podcast episode, I suppose, that made me look at my life in such a way that it was like a catalyst for changes that allowed me to really transform in an evolutionary kind of way. It made me look at myself a little bit more self-critically. I kind of thought I had figured out. And it's those people who I might have had some antipathy toward, or them toward me on that trip, that I'm actually most grateful for, because they were the ones who created the scenario that made me go like, man, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. And it took, now 25 years later, those are the guys who did me the biggest favor. And I see life that way anyway. It's a life experience for me to think that sometimes it's really the bad shit that happens. That's the time when bad things happen. It could be an illness in the family, or the loss of somebody, or the loss of a relationship, or not getting what you want, or getting what you don't want. That's when you start to listen and really do the searching. That's the time that we learn the most about ourselves, as opposed to going, that wronged me, or I got slighted in this situation, or poor me, I'm a victim. Look at losing a loved one, or my mother dying, or something like that. Like, God damn it. It's like, no, that's when you open the doors to perception and when you really have this opportunity. So 99, the great things that happened were great, but it was the eruption of all these emotional kind of turbulences that took place that I'm so thankful for. And I know everybody feels that way. They might not express it in the same way, but it changed our lives. And then also on the greater picture is, here I am, this guy, and all I wanted to do was just be a high altitude cameraman and do adventure films, and have an opportunity to work in the realm so I could use my abilities as a producer and a camera person and get paid to go on these amazing adventures. And I finally get my shot, and wouldn't you know it, I cross paths with one of the greatest figures of that era in British and world mountaineering, George Mallory. And whether it's chance or coincidence, there are no coincidences in life. I had a chance to see George Mallory and then actually meet his son, who at the time was 79 years old, and sit down and have dinner with him and talk.
What did he say about all this?
Not a lot.
Really?
Not a lot. He was very quiet. I think he was nervous. And I did tell him that I thought, I was really nervous because I didn't want to upset him. And I was already like, don't tell anybody about
When was this?
It was about 3 months after the expedition, 1999. Paula Apsell, the executive director of Nova, had a dinner at the Four Seasons in Boston. Liesl Clark, the producer, was there. David Brashears was there. Tom Holzell, Everest historian, was there. John Mallory, which was George Mallory's youngest son. Paula Apsell. And I ended up just sitting next to John Mallory. I said, do you have any memories of your dad? And he said, I think I remember having a snowball fight with him once. And I thought, I remember looking over my son's crib at 15 months, like that won't be me. Mm. And I said, David Brashears was like, Pollard, don't talk about it. Don't say anything to him about it. And I thought that was kind of weird because I was like, wouldn't you want to know about your dad?
Yeah.
And I just said, I was really quiet about it. I said, I know this is a really tough subject, but I'm positive that your dad didn't suffer.
Yeah.
Like, it was really fast. I know it. I know he didn't lay there like in pain. And it was obviously because of the hole over his head. I didn't explain the hole over his head, but that was an amazing experience. And I got an email from George Mallory's niece sometime after that, who said she was so comforted by knowing that he didn't suffer. But it took me, as I've said, 15 years to come to this place to be able to talk about it. And now it's been 25 years since the expedition. Changed all our lives. But it doesn't define our lives. It was just a kind of a, like, there was something to be learned, and you move on, and hopefully people can learn about George Mallory and keep doing justice to these amazing individuals who went really to the bitter end to try to get to the top of the mountain. And I think Mallory probably felt like I'm sure he was not happy that he died. Mm-hmm. Some people go and they meet their fate and they're like, well, I was just supposed to die here. I don't think he wanted to die. I know Sandy did not want to die.
Yeah. That was a really good answer to part one of that question.
Yeah. Now part two. Yeah.
Part two would be, what do you think the public at large and the alpine community, why are they so drawn to it? I mean, beyond the obvious, what do you think Mallory represents for folks?
It's a mystery. And generally speaking, mysteries draw people in because there's so many what ifs. It allows people to dream and wonder about things that at the time of Mallory and Irvine, you would die if you even went into the death zone, which wasn't even called the death zone until the 1950s. And so Mallory and Irvine disappeared into the mist, and there's so many possibilities of what might have happened. And the fact of the whole idea of mountaineering and what a mountaineer, why there's a fascination with it, is because it's an undertaking that you could die at any time. It's not makes you more brave, but it is a fascinating thing. Like, so you're willing to do this thing and you could die. And, and that fascinates people. And then there's the mystery. Not only Mallory and Irvine disappeared, but if they did make it to the summit, they would have been the first to the highest mountain in the world. And it would really put an asterisk on Hillary and Tenzing's summit in 1953, 29 years previously, in such an impossible time. And the generation that they represented, this British generation of brilliant, smart, like men of art and decorum. And it's just this element of mystery lost in time. And when people go there, it's like they go into this fantasy world. It's a freeing thing to dream about it. And I think about Mallory and Irvine every day, bar none, every single day. They're always kind of there. And I feel like somehow in having crossed paths with Mallory, I almost have a responsibility with what I saw to continue sharing the story.
Can I ask you a deeply personal question?
I never shy away from those.
Yeah. At this point in time in 1999, I'm sure you'd lost folks in the way that, we all lose folks as life goes on.
Mm.
But you hadn't lost an immediate member of your family at that point.
No.
Right? 6 years later, your brother passes away.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think if that had happened 6 years prior to the expedition rather than 6 years later, it would have informed anything that you had done when you came in contact with George Mallory? Just like a different vantage of...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So my brother, Jeff, was an exceptional guy, and he was the one who got me into ice climbing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I wanted to live in New York City or move to Los Angeles, and I was going to be in the documentary filmmaking world. I never wanted to climb. And then he took me ice climbing. I was like 26.
You're like, that's it?
My life flipped like a pancake. Bang. Everything changed. This big epiphany kind of. And so I have him to blame and thank, if you will, for that experience. And I always looked up to him. He was 6-7 years older than me, and I idolized him. And as we got older, we became soulmate-esque, if you will, and really, really close. And so he was really my biggest supporter. And if he had died, and he took his own life, which was the big shocker, because, somebody so full of life and passion and talent and brains, and, he lit up a room when he went into those places, but really consumed by like this deep black depression, of which I almost don't even understand that it exists, because it's so outside my experience. Had it been before that, oh yeah, I probably would have really, it would have been more like for him that I was doing that. Because I still use him as a guidepost, because he was the one who always encouraged me, like, don't listen to the naysayers. You have to go from your gut. You have to listen to your own intuition and not listen to the people who say, no, you can't do this. And because that's, as any child growing up, you hear even your own friends, oh, you're crazy, you can't do that. And sometimes you listen, or at least it's there, or a parent who tells you don't do that. And so, yeah, that would have probably had a different impact on me. And my dad had died 3 months before my brother took his life. So it was like a double whammy.
Sure.
And then my mother went off the deep end in some respects. Not really, but she was never the same for the next 13 years. How could
you be?
Yeah, it was really not cool. So, and tough. And my mom passed away I was supposed to go back to Everest in 2016. I was like, I can't go if my mom's sick. And in February, she's just like, I don't feel very well. And a week later, she was gone. So I was like, I guess I'm going to Everest. I was like, I'm not going. So I went back to Everest, and then I summited. And it was here kind of a little side tangent talking about people dying and informing your life. My mom, it was February 13th in 2016, and my sister and I are at my mom's house, and she dies, right? And she's there, right? And my sister and I are sitting there with her for like 5 or 6 hours, just hanging out, talking. It was kind of cool. It was actually a really beautiful time to talk about our childhood and shit like that. So finally we were like, okay, like, all right, enough of the conversation. I'm going to go take a shower. So I was like, I had to think about like, well, maybe I should go to Everest on this gig that I was going to get hired for. And I remember taking a shower, and I feel like, when you get that, like the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, like there's like some presence in the room, and I felt it. And it was so overwhelming. Like my entire body and the message was, you'll be safe. Like no matter what happens, you'll be safe. And I took that to mean Mount Everest in 2016. So I went down, I called the guy who wanted to hire me. I said, dude, I'm in. And he goes, thank God. Boom. We were out the door like a month later, right? So I went. And there was this moment on the trip. We got to the top of the Khumbu Icefall, and we were on the top of this little sliver, like this standing, kind of like a little glacial, almost like a serac, but it was this long sliver of ice about 15 feet wide and probably 50 or 60 feet long. And we were standing on it, and it started rocking back and forth. And let me tell you, if it fell 100%, we're dead, right? Ice is like crashing around us and everything. And the 3 guys I was with, they're like, we're fucking dead. And I was like, no. No, and I didn't say this to him, but I'm like, no, my mother told me we're gonna be fine, and they ran like it was almost funny. Their eyes were like, what? And I'm like, no, follow me, and I just like calmly walked away in the other direction. They ran the other direction. I was like, I'm telling you, follow me, and they went. They didn't die. They were fine, but I just knew it. I felt safe. And then, sometime later I was on the summit, and I dispersed my mother's, brother's, and father's ashes from the summit of Everest, like this little off the summit, like just to say thanks. Cause that really guided me. It was like, you could die any minute, man. Like people like, do you even know where you're going to be tomorrow? We think we do, but life is so precious, and we're like so consumed by our fears, little tiny fears. Like, if I had only taken that opportunity, or only done this, or told that person that I'm interested in her, or, back before I was married or something like that, or taken a chance on myself and believed in myself. We just listen to our fears because it's been beaten into us as human beings. But that's the whole purpose of our existence, to like cut out all the bullshit and the naysayers, and really remember who we are, who we were born as, like these perfect, all-knowing beings. And then as life goes on, all these outside static things get covered on us. And if we can pull that apart, and sometimes the death of a loved one is a real way of like straightening you out, man. And that's when you listen, like, now I know the meaning of life. But usually all the noises come back in, and you're back to the guy you were. Hey man, on the summit of Mount Everest in 2016, throwing those ashes off, so like no looking back, So that was a little tangent right there. You had no idea I was going there.
No, but that's exactly what it is, man. If there are 2 things that are inextricably entwined with Everest, it's death and the triumph of the human spirit. Yeah. I think that's a great place to end it.
That's a beautiful place to end it.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much to our guest, Thom Pollard. Thank you so much to our co-producer and engineer, Andrew O'Neill. And thank you guys for listening. If you want to find more of Thom Pollard, you got to check out Everest Mystery on YouTube. And you can check out his podcast, Happiness Quotient. And we're going to link both of those things in our bio, or not in our bio, in our show notes, whatever. You get the point. Come back next week. We're going to have some real good stuff for you, some really exciting stuff for you. Stay tuned on that until next time. Hey, we'll see you in the backcountry.
That was good. Rock and roll, buddy. Ching. That was good. Yeah, I did.
Everybody, thanks for watching this episode of the Backcountry Manifesto podcast. If you want more Backcountry Manifesto, go ahead and check out one of these links right here. And make sure to share the podcast with your friends, comment, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. It really helps us out. Again, thank you very much for watching. Now go check out one of these things. I like this one. This one was a good episode, I promise.